It's the Blues Rock Show with Pete Francis and Willie Witten.
Welcome to the Blues Rock Show. I'm Pete Francis alongside Willie Witten. Today, our special guest is Eric Johanson. Eric, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So let's talk about touring, because now this is a very interesting time for touring. Obviously, the last year has been very difficult, but now more people are getting vaccinated. More states are opening up vaccinations for pretty much all adults. So what are your kind of thoughts now on touring and where it's going? Do you feel comfortable getting out there and touring? And what do you kind of envision for the summer?
Yeah, I think one of the issues with this whole situation has been how far in advance a lot of these things are normally planned. So, we've had these sort of changing circumstances, and I know a lot of people have booked things and then had them canceled and then rescheduled. So I think that I feel that people are starting to have a little bit more confidence when they're booking, especially like toward the fall, that these events are going to happen. Less of that complete, just kind of like who knows kind of idea. So I start to feel things are moving back in the right direction. I know for myself, it seems like we're looking at, maybe more stuff in the fall, but I've had a couple of little things pop up short notice here or there that, may happen during the summer. But, my hope obviously is that it can get back going to a sustainable level, because for a while over the last year, there have been certain bands that have, usually more established bands that are able to go out there and sell tickets at a reduced capacity for much higher than their normal ticket price would be. And that's been important to sort of keep the doors open, but it's not, it obviously doesn't go all the way up and down the scale of bands, right? Because not everybody's going to pay $125 to be in a 25% capacity seat to see an artist. There's only certain artists that are going to be able to do that. But I think it's important that those artists have been out there doing what they can safely, just to keep it open, so that it all comes back. But, it's really, it's anybody's guess. I mean, I know that I'll certainly be looking forward to getting back out there. But it's always a bit of, having things planned out, and then usually there's a lag in time there between when things are booked and when the actual event happens. And typically that might be 4 to 6 months for festivals and stuff like that, at least. So I kind of picture the fall kind of picking up, but I'm sure people will be out there during the summer as well.
Eric, let me ask you, when you talk about the prep time going into a festival, it sounds like you're saying it takes longer to prep a festival, which it does in general.
Right.
But as an artist, do you think it's easier for the individual artist to show up for a festival and have a lot of the legwork done? Or is it easier for the artist to be sort of in control of their own shows, or maybe their small touring acts? And how do you feel about safety-wise? Which one would you rather do from that perspective?
Well, I actually think that the bigger the event, the more likely there are going to be discussions about safety and protocols and things like that. If you're going around and playing venues, you're going to encounter a lot of different opinions and, a lot of different, and in general, there's so many personalities in this business, and you might encounter one place where they just think, oh, we don't need to fool with all that, and then you might encounter another place that's like, doing everything they possibly can to ensure the safety of their customers and their the performers. So I actually think in a way it's easier sometimes to deal with the bigger things, just because there's more people at the table figuring these things out. But at the same time, yeah, the time scale is a lot longer. And, as far as playing the smaller shows, it is easier for them to just pop up. and, to have things like that happen. I mean, I've played, recently at an outdoor brewery here that's got a stage, and I might be doing that again next month. And, I mean, it's fairly casual, you know what I mean? It's an outdoor stage. There's picnic tables spaced out and everything. And that was able to come through like, in a month or in a few weeks or something. So, it's easier to get that sort of thing going as an artist than it is to have the big tours all planned out,
Do you think right now it's harder to get yourself booked, or from your experience or other artists, how much have the venues, do you think, have been affected by all of this with the pandemic?
I know a lot of them have been affected, quite a bit. I mean, here in New Orleans, most of the venues were closed for over a year and are only just starting to have live music inside again. So I know that was tremendously hard for them. I don't know personally, like, the specifics of how they're weathering through it. I hope that most of them are. I know there have been some that have closed. But, just always hoping that they all kind of make it through, and that they'll be able to survive. Because the small venues, especially as the music industry's changed, and you don't expect to make what people used to off of records. The ability to go around the country and play these small and mid-sized venues, that's the career now for most of us. That's the career that you hope to have, and that so if those places kind of close, it's not really clear how the music would proceed. So my hope is, I know there was some legislation and stuff too, in the stimulus for venues. And so, my hope is that they can keep it going, and that the end of this year and next year will start to bring things back for them.
So expanding on the idea of just how much the scenery in the music industry has changed, something that's come up recently, and it sort of goes hand in hand with this past year, things being put online, are things called reaction videos, which Pete and I still find a little bit odd, but they are very popular. And I want to ask you, Eric, when someone posts something on YouTube of just them reacting to a song, how do you feel about that? Do you think that it helps with spreading the word about the music, or do you feel that maybe they're sort of coasting on someone else's work?
Well, there's so much, I guess, that when you put out a song, whether people are sharing it with a comment, or whether they're using it as, a background on a story that they have on Instagram or something, like, it kind of just becomes part of the ether. I mean, it kind of just becomes part of how people interact on social media. I personally don't watch reaction videos. I just never. I think the first time I really was aware of the concept, I was like babysitting, like my 5-year-old niece, and she was watching these people in like, furry pajamas, like reacting to things. And I was just like, wait, so you're just watching their reaction? Like, I was just like, I don't understand anymore, but whatever, But I'm kind of aware of what you're talking about, that like somebody will listen to something that's like not in their genre maybe, or something they wouldn't normally listen to, and then they react to it for the first time. I guess if it turns new people on to the music, then cool. There's also people that make their own music videos to songs. And, there was one person that made a kind of simple music video with just some moving graphics to a song from my the Below Sea Level record. And it had like a pretty decent amount of views. And I was just like, it's kind of funny because, you go, well, that's, people are watching that video now. If I come out with a video, will theirs come up first or something like that? But, but that's just kind of how it is. I mean, I think there's something that's cool about that it covers songs too. I think there's something that's cool about the fact that you just really don't know what's going to happen with it when you put it out. And honestly, I think anytime people are interacting with it, unless they're absolutely trashing it, of course, that's not going to feel great for you as an artist. But if anytime they're interacting with it and they're taking their time to do something with it, whether it's react or make something creative to it or whatever, it's very cool. I mean, it's, you know, I can't see how it can really be bad.
So you would welcome people making reaction videos about your music then?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think there's a certain buffer that you have to have when you put yourself out there on the internet. You know, there's just occasionally there's going to be somebody that doesn't like what you do, and that's just how it is. I mean, there's the most successful artists out there have a ton of people that don't like them. So, you know, the hard part is when you're at the smaller level and you're actually able to read your stuff and whatever, you have to kind of maybe choose whether you want to or not, or because I like to interact with people, but I'm not, you know, interested in sort of like, if you don't like it, cool, you know, like whatever. Like, I mean, so, you know, you don't want to get too tied up in like worrying about how people are reacting to your music. But yeah, no, I mean, it's to me, I don't really understand the appeal of watching someone listen to something, you know, or watch the reaction thing. But I mean, if people are into that, then, you know, cool.
Yeah, for me, I don't really understand it too much either. I don't think Willie does. One thing that I do kind of like, though, that I have seen is when someone's got a guitar and they're doing the reaction video and then they actually like break down what they're doing on the guitar themselves. I think that's pretty cool. And there's some substance to that. But just like the general reaction and someone kind of nodding their head, it's a little weird to me personally, but
yeah.
Well, I think there's, you know, so from the reaction videos, let's talk about a real music video. In advance of your Covered Tracks Volume 1 album, you've released a single with an accompanying video, Head Like a Hole. So from Below Sea Level, which was very electric, very intense, there was a lot of sound in there. There's still a lot of sound in this album coming out, but you've gone a sort of a completely different direction than last year's offering. What made you do this, Eric? Why did you decide to strip everything back and go acoustic covers of all things?
Well, it honestly was inspired by the time at home, you know, during the pandemic. And, you know, I started doing these live streams every week. And that's not even something that I ever would have really thought was worth it for me to do. Partially because, you know, you have a certain sound that you're trying to get across. And I, you know, it's when I did the Below Sea Level album, I was picturing going out there with a trio, power trio, electrified, playing festivals and really playing this new music cranked up and like, you know, having fun out there. And when that became off the table and, you know, I started thinking about doing like some live streams, you know, at first I was like, well, that's kind of a different thing though, because, you know, like how does that work? But, you know, what else are you going to do? So I picked up an acoustic guitar and started, you know, getting on the live stream. Eventually I added a looper pedal just so I could kind of scratch some rhythms on the strings and play along with that, and or maybe lay down a little riff and play some lead over that. And people kept telling me, you know, it would be great if you released something like this. Like there was a lot of people that just really liked that sound, which was crazy to me because for me it was just, well, this is what I can do. I'm here at home. Like this is what I'm able to do. It's not something I would have thought was necessarily something I'd be interested in releasing, but you know, there was interest in it, and I started to kind of go, well, you know, it might be a cool thing to do to record some of these covers that I've done on the stream and then get some requests from people and see what they'd like to hear me do and pick some of those. It might be cool to do that because it takes a little bit less planning and preparation, you know, and it doesn't necessarily overshadow an album you've just put out while you're working your way toward your next album. Just kind of a side thing of like, let me record some of these things. And I ended up, you know, it was very hard to pick just like 10 songs out of, I've been doing a weekly live stream for a year now. So I'm going to do like 2 of them. So I've got the volume 1 coming out April 23rd and then volume 2 coming out June 4th. But Yeah. And so I basically just, I recorded them much in the same way I do the stream, just like some acoustic guitar scratching rhythm in a looper pedal, and then, a little maybe shaker or, a clap here or there or something like that. And it's cool. And I do think that sometimes you just want to listen to like more acoustic stuff, and so sometimes it can have an impact to strip it back and make it more sort of intimate and quiet. And I definitely think that what's been cool about the way that came about, asking people for suggestions and all of that was born of being able to be in the same place for a while, because it was honestly hard when I was touring to even answer messages sometimes. A lot of people don't think about the schedule of touring, but it's just you're checking into a hotel, then you're dropping your luggage, you might be going to a sound check, you're trying to hope you get something to eat, then it's time to do the show, then it's time to tear it all down and leave the place. And there's not a lot of time to connect with people on a weekly basis.
Right.
So now, I've been I see some of the same names and faces pop up every week, and you get like this little community going. And there's people that, like, while I'm playing, they're chatting amongst themselves and they know each other from the stream. So the album itself is also part of that larger thing that's come about through the pandemic, of having this whole little community that hangs out, for the live streams. And, it's been a really cool thing. I have to say, this definitely hasn't been all bad, as tough as it has been on the live front.
Yeah. So how many of these tracks were handpicked by you and how many were picked by your fans then?
I'd say it's a mixture, because some of them I introduced like to the stream, like I picked a song to play because I wanted to play it or because I thought of it, but then people heard me do it and then they'd ask me to do it again another week. And then when I asked for requests for what are some songs that you suggest me to check out to maybe record, some people came back with some of those same things they'd heard me do. And then some people came with some that I never thought of doing. So it was kind of a mix. I'd say it's probably about half and half, like maybe. Yeah, it's hard for me sometimes to think about whether I played them the first time because someone asked, or whether I played it the first time because I just thought of it and then people kept asking for it. But I mean, it's probably about half and half.
Feathers and Down, was that you or the crowd?
That's me.
Interesting.
I really like that record, the Cardigans record, called Long Gone Before Daylight. And it just, there's something about that song that just hit me in a particular way. And I've always, it's one of those, there's certain albums that, like, they're kind of emotionally heavy, and so you don't listen to them all the time, but maybe every few years or whatever, you listen to it, it reminds you of a time period in your life. And so that one was one that I picked.
So the album comes out April 23rd. Where can fans pick up the album if they want to get it?
So right now you can go to my website, ericjohanson.com, and you can get a, CD signed and shipped out a few days before release. And, or, you can go, it's going to be available pretty much everywhere as far as streaming and stuff like that. I also have digital downloads on my site. And of course, you get a digital version of the album if you buy a CD. And of course, for me, that's best, which I know some people don't know that, because I've actually had some people not ask and say, does it make a difference? And it does. And I'm not, I use Spotify. I listen to stuff on Spotify. But if you want to sort of have something tangible, or if you just want to support the artist, obviously getting it from their artist website is always going to be the number one way.
Yeah, definitely a good message to get out there. Thanks so much for your time today. We really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Blues Rock Show. For Eric Johanson and Willie Witten, I'm Pete Francis. We'll see you next time.